Lettering is having a bit of a moment, and no one is making it more colorful and quirky than my friend, Natalie Keller Pariano of Natterdoodle. I have one of her fun stickers on my laptop right this minute that says, "I was not made to be subtle." And this seems to be a bit of a mantra for her in her business and in her life. It is no wonder that we get along so well. Yes, Natalie does lettering, but guess what? We don't really talk a ton about lettering in this episode. Instead, we go into owning a brick and mortar store, what happens when your hobby becomes your jobby, why traveling is an important part of Natalie's business model, and speaking of travel, we do dive into the coronavirus and the effects it is having on the creative community. Before we talk to Natalie, hello there. I am your host, Jennifer Perkins, and this is a Creative Queso podcast. I am pumped you are here with me to talk about the business of being creative and the creativity behind running a business. I talk to all kinds of fun people, from professional knitters to tattoo artists, because you know what? At the end of the day, business is business, and you can learn something from everyone. This awesome episode is full of giggles and reminiscing of my recent trip to Columbus, Ohio, where I stayed with Natalie and the two of us attended Midwest Craft Con. But if you teach workshops, if you own a physical store, or if you're trying to find your voice in a crowded market, I promise there is something for you here. Back to lettering, I have the worst bubbly fourth grade cheerleader handwriting ever, with almost zero lettering skills, and I still walked away from today's conversation with so much good stuff. And I promise you will too. All right. Welcome to the Creative Queso podcast, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I am pumped. I was just thinking as I was getting all my questions ready, I was like, we have had kind of a whirlwind crafty romance together, you and I. We met in California, then we had dinner together, and I took your class here in Texas. Then I just stayed with you in Ohio, in Ohio. And then in a few months, we're going to kind of wash, rinse, and repeat with the whole cycle starting.
I know.
Yeah. Right? Another conference and another trip to Austin.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a lot of cool crafty time together. I'm not complaining.
I know. I'm not. I was going to say, I'm definitely not angry about it. And, I say all this because it seems like travel and taking your workshops on the road are a really big part of your business. Is that true or false?
I like it phrased as a question that's easy to answer. True, Jennifer. That is true.
But, I don't see a lot of people with a brick and mortar store doing what you do, which is traveling all over the country to kind of spread the crafty gospel. So do you, what made you decide to do that?
Yeah. So I've been traveling with the workshops for longer than I've had the retail space. So I think that was already part of kind of my rhythm of life and a big part of my business. So I have been accustomed to traveling with the workshops. And then when I did open the brick and mortar space, that was just a really great way for me to move things out of my home. Because you know this from being a crafter at home, every room somewhat ends up being your business. So my dining room and my basement and my guest room and my garage, part of my room, one closet in the hallway, they were all, part of Natterdoodle. And so I was looking for a way to kind of separate my work and life a little bit more, and also a place for me, a home base for me in Columbus when I'm teaching, rather than driving all around the city. I still teach some places in Columbus, but most of the time I can just do it in my own space now. So I'm able to do both, to teach in Columbus and have my own home base, but also hit the road and come to great places like Austin or St. Louis and teach when I'm out there as well.
I love it. So does the store, do you have someone that works for you? So, is the store open? When you're in Austin, is the store open? Are you, just open for, workshops and select hours? Or, how do you balance both?
Yeah. So I don't know that I found the perfect balance for both, but the space that I have is really my studio is the first priority for it. So somewhere for me to work and for Natterdoodle to live. And then the second priority for it is a workshop space. So so that we can have that home base here in Columbus. And then the third is retail. So it's great to have a retail store that people can pop into, but most of my product sales are still wholesale or online. So if I'm on the road, and I do have an assistant who's amazing, and for whatever reason she also can't be at the store, we just let folks know in advance that the days we're going to be closed and the fact that I'm on the road. And everyone's pretty understanding because for the most part, I don't treat it as a retail store proper, more like my art studio, which has open public hours.
I like it. Yeah, you kind of, when we were there, you kind of talked about it in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
ways, like your studio, but like it almost is like a co-working space sometimes too for like close friends or.
Yeah, yeah. I love when there are visiting artists in from out of town. Who I know I'm always offering. Oh, if you're going to work in Columbus, you should come work at the space with me, because that gives me an opportunity to have a coworker for a day. Because I came from a very team-oriented environment. Now, just being me and my assistant, who's part-time, it's really fun if there's other creatives sharing the space. And I also make the space available to my creative friends who are teaching workshops when they're in town or don't have their own space in Columbus.
And it's so cute, that space, by golly.
Thank you. I love it so much. It really is. It really is a dreamy space. I never, sometimes when you're going to work, it's like, oh, I don't really want to go to work. But I never really feel that way going to that space because even on a gray day in Ohio, which there are many, it still is bright and cheerful. And I think it evokes a lot of joy for folks. And it does for me too. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, balloons in the windows, neon in the back. Like, what's not to love, honestly? Like, I could spend a lot of time in there. So would you say that like you're like traveling around the country? Do you feel like that like augments your like brick and mortar business in any way? Or do you think that helps just raise brand awareness and increase those like wholesale orders and those online orders you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it increases brand awareness. When I get to travel to places like Austin, and often when I'm traveling, I'll try to teach several times when I'm in a new city, and maybe at a couple of different places. It just exposes me to folks who are interested in lettering, which is teaching is a big part of my business, but B, who probably like the kind of stuff I make if they're interested in lettering. So that's good. And it also exposes me to those shops and brick and mortar stores. I've picked up some wholesale lines because I've first reached out about teaching at a place, and they get to know me and then they get to know my work. And, I'm always a big believer, and this is about social media too. When you get to know someone and you trust them, you want to buy from them. And I think that's the same for retail store owners. If they like me and they're interested in my story, they'll be even better at selling my product because they know me and they know my work. So it's definitely it's helpful for online sales and brand awareness, but teaching is the biggest part of my business. It's my real bread and butter, and it makes up about 75% of my my profits.
And you're so good at it. Like, even I walked
Thanks.
out of there with that chalk letterboard thing and was like, oh my gosh. Like, my kids were so impressed. I was proud of myself. I was like, oh my God. Like, for someone with like incredibly crappy handwriting, this actually looks really good.
Well, Jen, you're such an artist. I would hope that you could leave with something spectacular, and you did. But yeah, I love to teach, and I appreciate that compliment. I mean, I was in education for 10 years before I left to pursue Natterdoodle full time, and I do feel like Natterdoodle, especially with the teaching, is really kind of that sweet spot for me, between the education and the art kind of combined into one. It's really, I think, combined my two greatest strengths, and I really do love it. I love it a lot.
Yeah. And, another thing that you did that I thought was so smart because, I joke that I have crafty ADD and I take I take different rando classes like all the time.
Yeah.
Like this week I'm doing macrame, next week I'm doing pottery, and then I'm
Yeah.
doing brush lettering. But the one thing that you did that I thought was unique and smart is you sent out that really helpful like newsletter after the class to everybody that was like, and it wasn't just a like, hey, follow me online and buy my stuff. It was like,
Yeah.
here are more ways to keep up with your skills. Here's the list of the things that we used. Like, let me know how I'm doing. Like, I thought that
Yeah.
was a really savvy thing to do.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, for me, I realize that when you're attending a workshop, it's an investment of your money, supplies and you're paying for supplies, you're paying for the teacher's experience, you're paying for the space, you're paying for all those things. And it is an investment of your money and your time. And a lot of people, I hope, want to continue with some elements of it after the class. I'm always comfortable if your goal is to come and have 2 hours of me time and you don't do anything else with it after. That to me is a good investment of your time and money. But if you're investing in it longer term and you're hoping to continue your skills, I always want to make sure that you leave feeling like your teacher, me, is still in touch with you, and that you've got access to resources. I also, hope that if you are going to continue your skills, that you'll think of me. And so one of the ways I'm able to do that is to offer, a credit towards your next workshop, especially if you're here in Columbus or Ohio. And then I also will refer other classes like, one of my great friends, Sarah Harsty, is a macrame artist and she teaches in Columbus. I'll often say, if you like this, and then refer them to another artist, because I always feel like what's good for the greater community ends up coming back to you anyway. So trying to keep in touch and get people, in a space where they're making time to feel more colorful, more creative, and more connected with other people.
I love that. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I felt. I was like, ooh, neon chalk markers. I could get into this.
I do love a good chalk marker, I will say.
Oh my gosh.
I own a
Seriously, they
million of
were
them.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you do. I saw the back of your studio. Like, it was
Yeah.
kind of pretty marker heaven. I was just like, oh, color codedness.
Anything in rainbow order is very attractive. So yeah.
I mean, it really is. Like, like my kid's like obsessed with that. Like everything she has to put like in rainbow order. I'm almost starting to wonder if it's like a little bit of a tick. But
I think it's just very satisfying, and I don't know, color brings me so much joy, and I think putting it in that way, you can keep your cups of markers mixed, but when you organize them by color, all of a sudden it's just a little bit more joyful, playful, fun. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for that. Like I always joke that I love like a messy space, and I do to an extent, but I also am very easily stifled by visual chaos. So sometimes
Really?
when
Yeah.
things are like when things are put away beautifully and look like that, I'm much more likely to sit down and just like make something from scratch.
Yeah.
Like I guess it seems more inviting.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I definitely, I joke that my thought process is like 1, 2, 3, purple, alligator 4. Like I jump all over the place. So if I can keep my markers in order, that's just one less thing to get me off track.
Your thoughts sound exactly like my thoughts. So I feel your pain. Yeah, I get you on those.
Yeah.
So besides the, the great newsletters that you send out after your emails, so what are some other like, thoughts or ideas or pearls of wisdom you might have for other people that do workshops? Not even necessarily people that are traveling, just like, I'm doing some workshops here in the Austin area coming up. Like, do you have any other suggestions for like how you can, A, fill the seats, but then B, maintain a relationship with those people afterwards? I mean, given you want them to have a great experience while they're there, but I'm talking more ideas about the before and after parts.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me before a workshop is to test the workshop. So, whenever I'm forming a new curriculum or a new workshop, I always make my friends be crash test dummies for that workshop. And not all of my friends view themselves as crafty. So, putting them in a position where they might have a harder time with a project, or I have one friend who wants to go like at double time when we're doing something, she wants to speed ahead. This is really good for me because those are the kinds of folks who are also going to be in the workshop. So I always try to sit down and teach the workshop just like I normally would at my dining room table to a few friends and see how they work through it and troubleshoot. And this is really helpful to me. I remember the first time I was going to teach hand lettered pumpkins, which to me was like, this is so basic. I can't even I can't imagine anything could go wrong. And then I had 3 girlfriends over here and none of them could get it. I was like, okay.
Oh my God, the fear of those bumps and those pumpkins is like already sending like lettering shivers down my spine.
Right. But see, because I'm so used to lettering on all surfaces, I sometimes just kind of forget that it could challenge other people. And then I'm sitting with my friends and they're being nice about it, but they're aggravated. I'm like, ooh, okay, good to know, because I need to figure out all the ways that I need to help my participants and the folks who attend the workshops work through these bumps, and what are some easier ways of doing this project that are easier than what I'm currently offering. And I came up with some solutions and was able to put on pumpkin workshops sell like crazy for me now, but probably because the first one went well because of word of mouth and it not being so scary like it was for the girls sitting at my kitchen table. So definitely testing the workshop is critical. And then when you're working with stores and collaborators, I think it's really important to make sure that y'all are on the same page about promoting it and what both the venue and the teacher, the instructor, will be offering. So I always like to, when a new space comes to me or when I'm approaching them, kind of say, here's what I look for in collaborators. And I have a little checklist to make sure that that's something they feel like they can fulfill. And also that I can say, here's all the things I'm able to offer, just to make sure right off the bat, we get it when we have equal investment, because it can be really difficult when you're in a new space trying to promote your own, especially because I travel so often. When I'm going to a new city, I really do depend on that venue to be all in with helping me to promote, because I might not have the kind of audience in Memphis, Tennessee, where I sometimes teach, that I do in Austin, because I've taught there several times. So I'm really looking for someone who can be very invested in what I'm bringing and know that that they're investing in me and I'm investing in them. So I think that's critical, is kind of a shared understanding of what the others are doing and are all in on. And then the after, I think after a workshop, like you brought up, that email that I normally send is really important. And then any kind of little bonuses you can offer along the way. When I first started teaching intermediate hand lettering, I wrote to everyone who had taken introduction to hand lettering, and I offered them a discounted rate for the first one, because even though I had tested it with some friends, I knew I'm so picky because I was in curriculum development and education. I'm so picky that I really wanted even a second set of eyes on that workshop. So if there's little incentives you can offer to keep them coming back for more, every time you attend a workshop with me, you get a coupon for $10 off your next workshop. So it makes them affordable and it keeps people coming back because they want to use that coupon before it expires. So just little ways to keep engaging them, I think, is really important. And that's a value added to them, not just bringing them back to your business. So it's dual purpose.
Yeah. Like I said, with the email, it didn't feel salesy. Do you know what I mean? It didn't feel like you just blanket added me to your newsletter. Like, it felt like, oh, okay, good. This is like more information about the class that I paid to take, which, I appreciated it. I thought it was
good.
Good job, Natalie. Good job. Keep it up.
Thanks. Okay. Well, that means a lot coming from you.
So I'm going to ask one more question about like the going back to the traveling stuff. And then we're going to get to the heart of Natterdoodle and, how it all came to be. But, obviously, like we were talking about how you travel a lot for workshops. And then since we're friends, I know that you also travel, like even when you're not teaching, like you just did alt and you said you didn't teach at Craftcation last year, right?
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so you like, you're like me. Like you like to travel to the crafty places even, if you're not teaching, which, hooray for that. I enjoy it too. It's like it really is a craftcation. So you and I were talking before we hit the red record button a little bit about the topic on everybody's mind, which is the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think, how do you see this playing out in terms of affecting, people that travel to teach or these craft conferences? I mean, I know for one, I'm just like crossing my fingers and kind of hoping it all, I don't know, just goes away. But that's the Libra Enneagram 7 in me.
Right.
Just like if I just pray hard enough, it'll just go away.
Yeah.
Burning
my boss
sage.
At my old job used to say, hope is not a strategy. And I would say,
I know.
Oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
well, too bad. It's mine most of
I
the
know,
time.
no.
So
It's got to be, it's part, here's what I say. It's part of a strategy. Because if you're scared, if you're running scared and you're negative, it's going to make it all the harder to deal with things like this, which really we just don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know if in 2 weeks things are going to die down, or we don't know if it's going to ramp up. I mean, there's really, it's unprecedented in many ways, at least in my lifetime. Yeah, I don't know what that's going to mean for events. I did just get back from Alt Summit, which is or referred to as Alt Summit, but it's Altitude Summit in Palm Springs. It's a lot of creatives were at that event, and they didn't cancel. They sent out some great information ahead of time, kind of making sure folks were ready, that they were encouraging, the basic things like washing your hands and making decisions based on your own health. And they were also, which I really appreciated, really direct about not letting racism creep into how you treat people at Alt Summit, because you might have assumptions about where Corona is coming from or where it originated. I think that's really important in the kind of landscape of all of this, is making sure that we're still being open and inclusive to people, even if we may have fear around a virus, because we don't want to be racist and we don't want to treat other people. I'm hoping that for Craftcation, which of course I'm bringing that up because you and I are both going, and I know that you and I both love Craftcation, that by the time we go there, that this will have died down. I just don't really know. I do worry about small businesses right now and what that's going to mean for me, you, others, retail store owners. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with other folks who are like-minded or have similar careers. And I see a lot of nervousness and anxiety around fewer people in and out of the door at the moment. I'm trying to work on right now a little piece that I hope to share in the next few days about how to support a small business, even when you may be having a staycation, so to speak, right now, when you're trying maybe not to interact with as many folks. Just because I do worry that in that economy that it's going to be a big struggle for folks. I am continuing with workshops as planned as of right now. We are Lysoling and cleaning. We already do, but like double time at the studio, and I'm taking as much care and precaution around that personally as I can. My philosophy right now is that most of my workshops are all adults, and I'm hoping that they're coming and making choices as preparedly as they can for themselves. And if they're canceling because they're afraid, or that they don't want to expose themselves to something, I fully appreciate and understand that. And so I'm trying to make some accommodations around that too, while still respecting my business, because it is, especially during these months, which are retail slow after Christmas, the first few months after, still respecting that this is my only source of income, and it will affect my whole year if we stop holding workshops, So
yeah, well, for smaller things, like I don't, it hasn't. I mean, I wondered the same things here because I have some workshops on the horizon, and I have like my book launch party,
I know,
and
so exciting.
I know, but I'm on the same fence. I'm like, do I cancel it? Do I not cancel it? I don't know. They just canceled South by Southwest. Clearly, my book release party is not going to be near as big as South by Southwest, but you know what I mean. Like,
it's pretty close, though. It's pretty close size-wise.
I mean,
yeah,
we don't know.
Yeah. That's right.
But they're pretty much parallel in the same field. Yeah, it is. It's just, you don't, I think people don't realize like the trickle down effect of all of it. You know what I mean? Like how it affects business, like all kinds of business, every kind of industry, like all the people are, even if you don't ever know anybody that gets it, you're going to know somebody who's been affected by it.
Right. And I in Columbus, last weekend was the Arnold Sports Festival, and they ended up canceling it for spectators. Only the athletes competing could be there. And this is a huge event here in Columbus. And, I worried about the economy here in Columbus, who over prepare for that because, we're having tens of thousands of people come to the city and restaurants are over preparing, it really is a dramatic shift when something like this closes or pauses, like South by Southwest. So, I do think it's going to have big impacts, and I'm trying not to live in fear right now, but I'm just trying to be as awake and alert and on keeping up with the news as much as possible.
Yeah. Girl, you need to let her use some like perky little sticker about washing hands. Like, get on it, like, make it like tomorrow. Like, because, we all want to be like, you don't want to put your head in the sand, but you don't want to be a fearmonger either. So, you could make it cute to wash your hands. Like, if anybody could do this, you could do this. So,
oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'll have to challenge accepted. I'll have to look into how to make washing your hands so chic. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm telling you, you could do it. I can see it. Like,
all right. I'll challenge accepted. I'll look into that.
Okay, good. I'll check in on you on that. So now we kind of jumped right into a whole, like, the middle of your career where you are now, but I want to backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
And talk about, so you touched on it a little bit that you used to be kind of in the education and the curriculum field, but like so many of us, you kind of accidentally went from hobby to jobby, as you called it, which I love. So can you kind of, right in the middle of this podcast rather than the beginning, like tell me and us kind of how Natterdoodles like came to be? Like what's your story?
Yeah, sure. So I was after graduate school I moved to Columbus, Ohio. I went to school in Athens, Ohio at Ohio University. Those are the Bobcats, not the Buckeyes. For those of you at home who are Googling Buckeyes right now, no, it's the Bobcats. And after school, I went to Denison University, where I was working in student development, student affairs. I worked in leadership and involvement. My background is in leadership education, so I created a lot of curriculum and programming around leadership development, emotional intelligence, social justice and inclusion. And that was my career at Denison. I was at Denison for 10 years. When I left, I had a really cool title, actually. And I still wish I could have this title. Dean of Co-Curricular Design. It's a pretty cool title.
Ooh,
I know,
it is
right?
Fancy.
Yeah. And I did love my title, and I loved my work. I loved college students. 18 to 22 is a really cool time in a person's life to just figure out not only like who you are right now, but who you're trying to become. And so I really, really got a lot of joy and satisfaction out of that work. I will say I was really stressed in that job. And so when I was at night having a really hard time falling asleep, I was trying to come up with when I felt the most mindful. And I realized I had been a writer all growing up. And in fact, I was a journalism major before I went to grad school. And then I felt the most mindful when I was kind of reflecting, journaling, kind of writing down my thoughts. And so I turned back to that. And that's kind of how I found hand lettering when I was still in education. And I just started to teach myself hand lettering a little by accident. I had a friend who is an expert on building healthy habits. He's written a great book called Atomic Habits. His name is James Clear. And he encouraged me when he saw me kind of doing this visual note taking and this hand lettering to try to practice that habit every day for stress relief, for kind of mindfulness. And I took on that challenge and started doing that. And I started posting to Instagram. And Instagram 5-6 years ago was not hard. You could post something and people would see it, and you didn't have to like put a million hashtags or know exactly what time of day to put it on. I was really using it as an accountability measure for myself, not really for any other reason. And organically, people just found me on Instagram. And I think people are often just looking for places where they can be inspired or find a little bit of joy or connection online. And folks were kind of feeling connected to what I was doodling and sharing, and were asking to buy what I was making. But I never considered myself an artist. And so I would not let anyone pay for it. So I would just ship it to strangers across the country. on actually the globe, and be like, no, 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 you don't have to pay for it here. If you like it, I will pay $8 to ship it to you.
Let me pay you to like my things.
Yeah, allow me to please pay for this and make this for you, stranger. But it was a cool time, because I think as I was doing that, my friends were saying, that's amazing. You're paying a lot in postage, and it's clear that people like what you're making. Maybe you should sell it even for a nominal fee. And I started to kind of rethink, not just, I could make money on this, but, what I have to offer to the world is valuable, right? And people want it and want to see more of it. And so I just built myself a little website, and I posted 15 things the first day, and they all sold out that day. And I thought, okay, I might have actually stumbled into something that I didn't know I was good at, and that other people wanted to see more of. So that's kind of the origin story of Natterdoodle. And then I just started doing, craft shows and getting involved with the creative community here in Columbus, Ohio, and just kind of teaching myself to own this little side hustle. And then about, just under 3 years ago, I left to pursue Natterdoodle full time. I left my full time job to work with Natterdoodle and see what I could make it into, and if I could make it work. And it's hard. It's still really hard, but I love it, and I'm grateful for it every day. So yeah, that's the little origins. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's I don't really think until maybe even my kids' generation, we'd never, in my generation, and you're younger than me, but, we didn't grow up thinking you could be a lettering artist when you get older.
Right. No.
You could decorate Christmas trees when you get older.
Yeah.
It was you can be, a lawyer, a doctor, a factory worker. There were these jobs my kids and the upcoming generations, they know that careers in this creative industry are possible. So I love these stories about all of us, have that, where it's well, I was doing this one thing, and then I started making this other thing, and then I started selling, and then I was like, hey, wait, I could do this instead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I had friends who were graphic designers, but I don't know, even well into my late 20s did I understand that you could make a living in art doing anything other than graphic design, maybe, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I really didn't know much about the maker movement, which really I do feel has been booming, over the last few years. So, I'm really grateful to be on this creative journey. I always call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I love making things. I struggle with the business side, but I've, kind of guess and check philosophy. Does this work? No. Does this work? Yes. Okay. We'll do this with business. Because it's a part of my brain I didn't have to flex before. In education, you get a budget, and then you just can't go over that budget. But I didn't have to ever make money for the college. I just had to not overspend what was in the budget for our departments. And it's a very different ballgame when you're trying to make things and make money, and it's just totally, and there's so many different channels for it, and which ones to pursue and which, aren't for you. So I did a year of yes when I first left my job. I'm going to say yes to every creative opportunity and see what sticks and what I like and what makes money and also what just brings me joy. And then the year after that, I quickly did a year of edit, which was, no. That was fun. But now we're going to do a year of what actually makes sense and not just saying yes to everything. But I'm glad I had that year of exploration so I could have a year to kind of pare it down and figure out what really worked for Natterdoodle and for me. And I think that's really the only way to do it, right? Because there are so many different kind of channels you can go down with it.
Yeah, and you can go to, since we were both just at Midwest CraftCon, it's even if you're trying to stay within your focus, there's just you can go down that rabbit hole of feeling you need 17 passive incomes and you need to be
Yeah.
teaching this workshop and you need the affiliate links and you need,
Right.
to have a product and you need to have a podcast and
Totally.
I mean, I do it all the time. So,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes you just have to like do exactly what you said. Take that time to like, I mean, I feel like I've done it all, and then I like had to do the same thing, like kind of come in and be like, all right, like this wasn't working. Like you can't
Yeah.
keep on doing that one. Like you got to keep doing more of this other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and there will be a lot of people who will think they know what's right for your business too, and I find that still, people are giving me advice and some of it's great. And it's like, yeah, that's great. And I should be thinking about that right now. Some of it's like, I should maybe think about that down the line. And some of it is just a distraction and isn't really what I need to be focusing on, either for my own head and heart or for actual like the viability of my business. So it can be hard to sort through some of that stuff. And it's hard to say no, especially if the thing is cool, but it doesn't actually serve your greater goals, right? You have to be choosier. And I think I'm getting better at that because I did that year of edit, which could be my excuse. Like I'd get an email, you should partner with us. And I'm like, hello, this year is the year of edit. Thank you for understanding. And a lot of people were like, that's cool. Like we like that you're focusing that way. So I've just tried to be really open with people who are giving me business advice or with opportunities. Like this is what I'm currently focusing on. And I have to kind of stay in this lane a little bit and only veer out selectively.
Well, see, you think you don't have you're just now flexing your business mind. But that sounds like pretty damn stellar advice to me. Like, I've been doing this 20 years and I don't even know how to stay in my lane. Like, I went from Christmas trees to podcasts. I mean, don't take advice from me on anything.
But you're excited about if the podcast is something that excites you and makes that for me is enough of a reason. But just because someone else thinks you should be doing a podcast, that's not a great reason, right? I used to spend a lot of energy on what other people thought was the right solution for me. And that just wore me out because I never really felt as committed, Like there are things that I do now that really aren't moneymaker. Like I do fundraising workshops for charities and nonprofits. I make very minimal money when I do that. I do it because I like charity and I like to be involved in the community. So is it really part of my greater goals about sustaining my business? Not really. But does it bring me satisfaction and joy and make me feel more connected to the organizations in my community? Yeah. So that's a choice for me because it also makes me just feel good. And that's enough of a reason for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was going to ask you, I'm going to come right back to that, but like I'm going to come around to it like in a weird convoluted way. But, you were saying like, having a business is hard, and that's the truth. It is hard. And when we were at Midwest Craft Con, I got put on that panel about self-care. And, one of the things everybody was talking about, like, I think people that don't make a living from their creativity think that sounds like the most amazing thing ever. And, people were asking me questions about it. And I wasn't trying to be Debbie Downer, but I was saying like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because once it does become your full-time gig, you start feeling like, can I do these other things that just bring me joy? I mean, I need to be doing something that's going to pay the bills all the time.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself get stuck in that loop?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, the greatest irony of my business is that I started my business accidentally through my self-care practice.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, there is some irony in that.
So it's
a little bit.
Right, exactly. I was doing hand lettering so that I could calm my brain down at night. And now I'm doing hand lettering and it comes with all these other stressors. So it's, yes, absolutely. I do think that is a real challenge. And I think it is, a lot of people, especially when they're attending your workshop. Even last night I taught a workshop and someone said, oh my gosh, you're living the dream. And I am in many ways. Like I am my own boss. I have a magical space. I have a lovely home and the cutest dog. And also I'm very stressed out because I half the time feel like I don't know what I'm doing, So it's like, I don't ever want to be ungrateful for all the loveliness that is my life. And also I don't want to be inauthentic that there were months where I was really scared last year. Like, can I really do this anymore? Is this going to work for me? And I try to be really authentic about that online, talking about, I had 2 months where I couldn't pay my whole business credit card off. It scared me, and I'd never been in that position before. And that is and I know that's an absolute statement of privilege that I've never been in that position before. I realized that. And it's the first time that I thought, whoa, a 9-to-5 job with a health plan and a 401k, all those things. Like, yes, it had its downsides, and it also had security, right? So there is that can be kind of messy. So I have tried to come up with other ways to have self-care that aren't my hand lettering anymore. Not that I don't get any self-care out of it, but I go to therapy. It's pretty important for me. I really, it's just really beneficial for me, and I'm really glad I'm going. It's taught me a lot about myself, about my coping mechanisms. It just is a safe place for me to talk about my fears and my worries without and feeling like maybe I can leave some of them or just shut the door a little bit more on them when I walk out the door. That's really important. Travel for me is therapy. I mean, getting away is really important for me. I've been a big traveler my whole life, and it is nice for me that I get to go teach when I'm traveling. And that often will pay for my flight. But it also is just a nice way for me to take care of myself and get creative inspiration and just enjoy myself. But yeah, it is now the case that hand lettering isn't the self-care that it once was for me. And so I have had to be intentional about how am I taking care of myself outside of that, when that used to be my outlet for that kind of relief.
Yeah, because I was going to say, for me, when I did Naughty Secretary Club, when I got to that point where I was just like, if I see another bead, I'm going to hurt somebody. I figure you get to that, point where you're just like, I want to stab my eyes out with all the brush lettering pens. So, do you have any other, besides, travel and therapy and, God bless therapy and Zoloft, but do you, have any, do you take, other creative classes? I was telling you earlier, I take all the, rando classes.
Yeah, I do. Not as often as I'd like to, but that's one of the reasons I'm obsessed with Craftcation and CraftCon, is because when I'm there, I have never taught at Craftcation, and I absolutely could, and I think I will one day. It's on my bucket list, but I've been selfish in that when I go to Craftcation, I want to really have it be a vacation. And so I'm in there latch hooking and failing miserably at it. I'm really bad at it. And doing stained glass, and immediately after making my beautiful stained glass window ornament, dropping it and breaking it. So,
no, that's the saddest story I ever heard.
It's a pretty sad tale, but I didn't mean to bring it down such a bad road. I go to those events so that I can experience those fun moments and the fun of being out of my element with creativity too. And then I've gone to circle weaving because my friend teaches macrame classes and all kinds of stuff in Columbus that are just candle making, all kinds of fun stuff. And because I'm my target audience, honestly,
Right. So, I know.
Yeah. I mean, I really am. So I love to go to other people's events. And it's also just helpful. Another way of thinking about, I never thought about talking about it this way when I'm at my own workshop. So plus you can expense it, it's research. So why not?
True that. Yeah, no, I love, that's for me, I was saying in my painting class that it's sometimes when you're trying to create things that you think would make a good product, or when I'm trying to create something that I think a client would like, it's not necessarily you've seen my art. That's not necessarily, what I'm going to do for HGTV is not the same thing of what I'm going to do in my own private time art. So sometimes taking those classes, I think is a good, release for all those things and to, flex other creative muscles you didn't know you had. And then and then in weird ways, it comes back to what you do for a living, I find. Like you said, even if it's just a good tip on how to teach a workshop, but I always find that I take something away from one of those classes that I'm like, ooh, I want to do this and this other thing that I already do.
Totally. I think that's really true. And, even, I always try to go to all the new exhibits in Columbus, the art exhibits, because even if I don't have, the 3 hours to take a class, or I just know that I'm not going to be good at X, Y, or Z thing, going to the exhibits and experiencing other people's art for me is huge, especially when there's an awesome theme, which really just challenges how I'm looking at my own work, how I'm seeing other people's work. So yeah, just creative experiences outside of just workshops. I'm always desperately looking for those. And we just had so much fun when we went to that amazing Otherworld installation when we were in Columbus, right? Which is this old, I think it was like an old Office Max or something. It's enormous, but it was like 20 something rooms inside of this place. And I left that feeling so inspired by texture and light, and just in how these art pieces there interacted when you touch them. And I was thinking about, how does that play out into my work? That's actually part of the reason I started getting into like holographic stickers and things, because I loved at that Otherworld exhibit, when you would touch something, it would shimmer, and I was like, oh, I wish my stickers could be more like that, So yeah, all those things.
And I want you to do blacklight things. Like that place I
know
left
you
going
did
like,
say that. I know.
I was like obsessed with all the like you should do like fuzzy blacklight lettering posters that people can remember those, like you used to get like the unicorn or like the puppy chasing a butterfly,
and it came with 3 markers. Yeah,
only
so
3.
small.
It was like, what in the hell? That damn poster is 4 feet tall, and you expect these 3 little baby markers to finish the job?
I know. Well, that was a good marketing technique, because then you had to go buy more of the markers.
Exactly. See, you could sell those and be like,
there you go.
You're going to need more markers. So go ahead and buy them here.
I don't know how you manufacture those, but I'm all in. If like Lisa Frank's team is listening, call me.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd be a good fit. You'd be so good. I love it. But, and this is one of the reasons why, like, because you're so creative and you do, like, look at these other things. And, right now, like, lettering, any field, lettering can be like a crowded space. Like,
sure.
So how do you make Natterdoodle stand out from the rest? Like, to me, I can see your stuff and know it's your stuff. Like, it stands out to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have like conscious ways you're trying to make it like stand out from the rest?
So, yeah, I would say some of them are conscious and maybe some are unconscious, and I've just started to kind of unravel what they are. My personal mantra and philosophy, just as a human being and really as a woman, but is stay tender, stay tough. And I think that really represents my work really well. So this kind of duality of women, that we can be strong and soft at the same time. And I think my work often looks really feminine, but the messaging is really powerful, and really about strength, or just being a kick-ass person. And so I think that a lot of my work kind of reflects that. Like it's really colorful, it's joyful, but a lot of the time it's really, it's deep and kind of rooted in authentic feeling, emotion, and just kind of empowering messaging. So that's kind of, I hope what some people can get from my work is that kind of philosophy of, you can be both things, right? You can be pretty and really, really prickly. You can be both things.
You can be both things, yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think one of the things that makes it stand out. I follow a lot of artists on social media, but I don't follow a lot of lettering artists, and not because I don't love their work. There's I do follow several, but I've always been really conscious of like, I want my style to develop as my own, and I love brush lettering, but it's not necessarily my aesthetic as an artist, even though I am obsessed with watching videos of it, because it's like addicting, kind of like when you watch people like frost cookies online. I could do that all day. But I've always wanted my style to develop more naturally. So I try to have my influences from art are maybe less from lettering artists and more from other artists, if that makes sense. And so I think that also makes my lettering, because it's not, I'm going to use air quotes here, which you can see, I think, through the radio, correct? Air quotes. Technically correct, right? It's not technically technically proficient if you're reading like the 101 guidebook on calligraphy, but it has its own kind of unique style. And I add a lot of different variety of technique to my work that I think also maybe not every piece looks exactly the same, but they look like they belong in the same family, if that makes sense.
No, and I love that. And I think that's one of the reasons that makes me love your style is that it's like an eclectic blend of several things. B, you use lots of color. C,
Yeah.
you have stickers that
Maybe
say
too
things
much.
like, I was not made to be subtle. Girl, don't ever say there's too much thing as color. That is like, that's like blasphemy around these
It's not for
parts.
everyone, that's for sure.
So I have 3 quick questions to kind of wrap things up with.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so A, and the most important question of this whole podcast interview is,
Oh, gosh.
Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
Does confetti miss me?
Yeah. Yeah, Confetti, the dog, misses you dramatically. She's very, right now she's very preoccupied because the mail hasn't arrived. So she is a very stereotypical dog and that she needs to yell at the mail person every day. So she's currently working on that. But in between waiting for the mail to arrive, she's been just absolutely devastated since your exit.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
It's been touch and go. Good. That's what I want to hear. That like confetti is just like dying for me to come back. So I do love me a cute dog. And Tallulah loved her confetti sticker.
She did. Good.
She did. I stole one of them, but she got to keep the rest of them.
Good.
Next question. I like how you just like really nonchalantly like threw in that like James Clear New York Times bestseller like comment. You were like, my friend James Clear. I'm like I haven't read Atomic Habits. So how do you
read it?
Yeah, of course I have. Well,
It's so good.
I don't read anything, but I listen to it on Audible, and that totally counts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely counts. I listen to it on Audible too, and he's one of my closest friends.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
Yeah. He's awesome. Yeah.
How do you guys know each other?
Oh, how do I know him? Oh, so he was a student at Denison.
That's so funny.
He was in my first graduating class at Denison, and I actually didn't know him really when he was a student, but his wife is one of my very best friends. And so as they were dating, I got to know him through her, and they live here in Columbus. And we've been great pals for years. He's an amazing person. He's a great writer. He's smart as a whip. He's tall as a human being can possibly be. And he's just absolutely wonderful. He's great. He's a really good friend and a really caring person. I love him.
Oh, well, when you said that, I was like, needle on the record scratch, like, what? I know that. I get his newsletter. So that's
I know, fun. Yeah. He's great. It's funny because he was on Amy Tangerine's podcast, and I didn't know he. Yeah, and I didn't know he was on it until I was listening to it, and then I'm like, "Excuse me." And I called him. I go, "What made you think I wouldn't want to know that you were going to be on Amy Tangerine's podcast?" He's like, "I didn't know." I'm like, "I didn't know that." Like you would be connected to her. I'm like, she's a pretty big deal. I definitely know who Amy Tangerine is in my sphere. She's like huge. And he's like, "Oh, sorry. Did you want me to connect you to her?" I'm like, "No, I already know her, but you should have told me."
That's hilarious. Well, it's funny, like, in bringing it full circle, is I really think Amy is who told me about that book.
Really? How funny.
Yeah. I think she's who put it on my radar, like, either at Craftcation or when she was in Austin, we went out to dinner. But I kind of think she's who told me about him.
That's wild. Yeah. It's a small
full
world.
Circle. I know.
Well, next time you visit Columbus, I'll have to bring you over to meet James and his amazing, awesome wife, Christy, who's frankly better than James as far as I'm concerned. But she didn't write a book. I'm kidding. They're both amazing. They're amazing people.
I like it. Well, speaking of coming to Columbus, we didn't go when I was there, but I ask everybody this question. If we had gone for queso, where would we have gone?
Yeah, so I was actually very surprised that you didn't kind of demand this of me when you were here. But one thing that I should say is I am more of a guacamole person, which I know is really hard for you to hear. But I do, if I'm going to eat queso, I want to eat it at a restaurant called Nata. And they have one in Cincinnati and one in Columbus. And it's just really good, and they give you way too much of it, and you could really just not order dinner and just eat the queso and be very full, and it's very, very good. But I also want to order guac too because I love guac. Really, I just want more things to put on chips is what I want.
I mean, exactly. Give me all the dips.
And vegetables, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have your guacamole, like, that counts as your vegetable to go with your cheese dip dinner.
That's true. Well, and at Nata, they give you, what is that? I want to call it, I know I'm going to call it the wrong thing. It's white. Jicama to dip in your guac. And there's something very satisfying about how it's cold and the texture of it. Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. It's good. They make them into tacos here. Like, they cut it real thin and like you can get a little taco.
Yes.
It's crazy tasty. Well, then it's done. So next time I come up there because confetti misses me, we're going to go get queso with James Clear. And
there you go.
I've got it all planned.
That makes total sense. I'm excited for it. Sounds like a good starter. That's day 1, and then we'll come up with what day 2, 3, and 4 will be with later.
I like it. But until then, I will see you at Craftcation. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I've had such an awesome chat.
Yay! It was great to chat with you and talk some creative, cool stuff.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for stopping by and chatting. If you find yourself in Columbus, be sure to hit up the Natterdoodle shop. If Natalie is teaching in your area, get into her class. And in the meantime, check out all her amazing goodies online at natterdoodle.com. That's Natterdoodle. And on Instagram at natterdoodles with an S. Need more creative queso in your life? Well, I just don't blame you. You can check out other episodes and conversations with people like Craftcation founder Nicole Stevenson, Alt founder Gabrielle Blair, and other amazing lettering artists like Shelley Kim and Amy Tan. Remember to please subscribe, share, rate, review. Any and all of the above makes me feel warm and squishy inside and helps me promote this podcast. If you want to help support this podcast, one of the easiest things you could do is pop over to Amazon and check out my influencer shop. You can find books from all my guests, craft supplies, and more. It's amazon.com/shop/Jennifer Perkins. Thank you to Mariah Gossett for producing, Chris Beck for the music, and to you for listening. And remember, if you want to hang out all week long, you can find me on Instagram at Creative Queso or at Jennifer Perkins.